So there is a section called multi-dimensional expression. Okay. So for this topic, I'll be going through some of the examples. Okay. I'll be going through some of the examples how you can query a cube. How you can query a cube. Okay. But to tell you, this is not so easy. Multi-dimensional expressions are not so easy as you are writing the SQL queries. Okay. So what is this multi-dimensional expressions? Multi-dimensional expression are nothing but you write queries on top of tables, right? You write queries on top of tables, right? Once you have a cube, you cannot write a query on a cube because cube is a multi-dimensional structure. To query your cube in some specific format, then you should go for MDX. Okay. So MDX, who has developed this MDX? MDX is developed by Microsoft. Okay. MDX is developed by Microsoft, and this MDX is also used in some other tools, something like Cognos, okay, and something like business objects, right? So, but this is developed by Microsoft, but used in some other place also. This is the Microsoft standard. Okay. So this is used to write queries on your cube. Okay. So it is called as multi-dimensional expressions query language. It is used to retrieve the information stored in OLAP cube, right? So what is the difference between the MDX and TSQL? So basically a TSQL is builds the queries the tables, and MDX queries the cube, right? And MDX is designed to handle the multi-dimensional cubes. Okay. So before I start here, right, so let us go through some basics. Okay, let us go through some basics. So the basics are something like this. Usually we will do, I think already you know how to query a table, right? So we do select star from table. Okay, we do select star from table, right? But in MDX we don't do like that. Okay, because it is a multi-dimensional expression. So there are two concepts in it, right? So there are two concepts in it. Usually we talk about some rows or columns, some from cube. Okay. Usually talk about one rows or columns from a cube. Okay. So there is a concept called axis. Okay. So what is this axis? Axis can be x-axis or y-axis or z-axis. Right. It can be any m-axis. Right. The axis can be different in a multi-dimensional way. Okay. So for one row or for one select statement, it creates one axis inside. Example, if you have in a select statement you have three things which you are carrying, then it creates three axes. Okay. So there are some syntaxes. So but looking at this theoretical concepts, I'm sure that you will not understand anything about MDX, but I have already done some background work to give you some of the idea about some MDX queries. Okay. So what I'll be doing is I'll be going through that list and I'll tell you how it works, right? Okay. And there is one difference between TSQL and MDX. Usually in the TSQL we use select, right? In the MDX also we use select, right? In TSQL we use where condition. Okay. Where condition in TSQL is to filter the records. Okay. But here it is not used to filter the records. We call it as a slicer. Okay, so I'll tell you what is the slicer and all those things. And we have some other concepts called for tuple and sets, right? We'll have the concepts of cross join. So what I'll do is I'll instead of explaining you here theoretically, I'll try to execute some of the MDX queries which I've already prepared in the background. Okay, so I'll try to explain you that, right? Okay, so what I'll do is I'll go back to my desktop and I'll close the things what I've opened earlier, right? So to do the MDX queries, what you should do is, first of all you have to log into your analysis services from Management Studio, right? So this is we are trying to write some MDX queries, right? So how you can do is, I'm going to my management studio. This is my SQL Server 2014 management studio. So I'm doing as run as administrator. Click yes. So here, instead of connecting to a database, what we do is we have to connect to a analysis services, right? Here by default it is database, so don't connect to database. Go to analysis services, and this is your analysis server, right? Just connect. Okay. So once you connect this, what happens is it will list out the databases available in the analysis services. So already we have seen yesterday that we have 5 to 6 databases already, 4 to 5 databases already deployed, and we will use one of the databases which I have deployed separately apart from the class, and we will use that to query to find out the MDX queries, right? So let us wait for this to open. Okay, so by the time it opens, right, so let me tell you something about MDX, right? So MDX is MDX in the real-time scenarios. If you're developing a very new project, right, usually MDX is not required for the first rollout. Okay, but once the project is rolled out for the first time and user has some different requirements which is not directly possible from your cube. Example, user may be having the requirement like this. I will click something in my Excel sheet, and whenever I click that, right, you just give me the top 5 selling products from my queue. So the top 5 selling products can be changing over time, right? Today the top 5 selling products may be different, and if I query after a month it may be different based on the sales amount, right? So for that what we have to do is we have to create a data source view, right? And we have to create a named query in the SSAS, and there we might have to write some MDX, which is if it is not directly possible by the cube. Okay, but in the real-time scenarios, like only 10 to 20% of the projects will require MDX, right? But otherwise, like the things can be done easily using the existing results. Okay, MDX is not an easy language. It's very tough, right? It's not easy to master like SQL, but only if you understand the concept of attributes, members, hierarchies, and all those things, then you will be able to interpret what is happening in the MDX. Okay, so this session is not to too much concentrate on MDX, but for you guys to give a fair idea how MDX works and how we can really query the MDX, right? So this one, so we have a thing called databases, right? What is this? Actually, we are looking. If you look at here, this is analysis server, not database server, right? So these are our database for analysis server, right? So I've deployed a thing called AS tutorial, right? So I have a thing called AdventureWorks database, but at the same time I have another thing called AS tutorial. Right, I'll go here. Okay. Okay. So I have a couple of things, but what else is like by default if you Google, right? So you can actually download this. Okay. What you can do is like you can just go to the google.com, download AdventureWorks DW. Yeah. So if you write like the download AdventureWorks GWSSAS, I have something in the first link as AdventureWorks 2008 Analysis Services project. Okay. So this project is by default created by Microsoft. Okay. So if you just download this zip file, you will be able to have a cube already, and there will be different dimensions and different fact tables. And this is one of the best places for you to understand more concepts about the cube, dimensions, fact, measure groups, attributes, hierarchies, and all those things. So all the best standards in the industry are applied in this project. Okay, this is one of the best good projects where you can do your research, right? So for this they will use a source called AdventureWorks GW, right? So to run this project, you should have a database called AdventureWorks GW, right? You can download that also, AdventureWorks DW database, right? So there is another thing called Microsoft SQL Server product samples, which are the databases. So there are some couple of, this is 2004 sample database, but you can have the 2008 also, right? You just go to 2008 R2 and yeah. So there is some database called AdventureWorks DW2000 R2 data file, right? If you download this, what you can do is like this will be downloaded in the form of MDF file, .mdf file. So what you have to go do is like you have to restore this or attach this file to your SQL Server database. So where all your dimension tables and fact tables will be loaded, right? So this will be your source to this project. So when you open this project, you will see the cubes, right? And this will be having a data source of this one. This is one of the databases in your SQL Server, right? So what I did is like I've deployed the project in my local machine. Okay. What I did is I deployed the project in my local machine and I have a project called AdventureWorks. Okay. So I have a thing called, so as I said, I have prepared some of the queries where I can explain you in the class instead of writing it over, right? Because to write it in the class and execute it, it will take a lot of time. So I've prepared it and I'll try to explain some of the concepts out of it. Okay. Some of the concepts out of it, right? So first of all, how you should write a MDX query is, I connect it to analysis services, right? By the moment I connect it to analysis services, automatically there is some other window coming up here, right? Which is for MDX queries, right? So on the top, okay. So here I can connect. So what I can do is I can connect to this again, right? Here on the top, if I connect to this, so there is a catch here, right? So let me show you. So on the top there is a thing called AdventureWorks DW2008. My project is selected as this one. Okay. Sometimes what happens is your project may be different. Sometimes what happens is like your project by default it will be automatically selected to this one. If it is automatically selected to this one, this will also change. Okay, this will also change. So what you have to make sure that you are in a correct database. Okay, you have to make sure that you are in a correct AdventureWorks database, correct analysis services database, right? Though I am in analysis service 2014, I have a database name called as AdventureWorks DW2008R2, which I have a cube called AdventureWorks. So make sure that you have a properly connected here and you have the proper cube name here. So in one project there may be multiple cubes, right? This is one cube and this is another cube, right? So it will show whatever the number of cubes you have, it will show here, right? So just try to select only the required cube here and just remove it, right? I don't want that. Yeah. So here what we'll do is I have prepared some of the things, okay, for you. So how we can query the MDX? So usually what happens for the MDX? So there is some syntax, okay. Select something on columns, okay. Select something on columns. Okay, comma, something on rows. Select something on columns, select something on rows from cube, right? So this is the basic syntax, where slicer. Okay, so what is the slicer? So I'll tell you. So what happens is usually in the database table you do something like this, right? Select star from table, right? But all these are your columns here and the rows will be on the bottom. But as this is a multi-dimensional thing, the syntax is little different than the TSQL. This is the syntax, standard syntax. So this is the standard syntax for MDX, right? What you have to do is you have to make sure that you are in a correct cube and you can query here. Select something on columns, something on rows from cube, where slicer, right? So this where condition is called a slicer. So what is a slicer? Usually we call it as a filter in SQL, right? But here where means, so it is like a slicer. So what is a slicer is, if you are querying the multi-dimensional cube, if you are querying the 3-dimensional cube or 5-dimensional cube, right? So in a cube you want some of the data present in between those axes, right? In between those axes, right? So actually we don't call it as filter. If you want to call it as a filter, then it should be multiple filter. So we call it as a slicer because it is restricting the things from multiple axes. Multiple axes, right? It is restricting the things from multiple axes. So that's why we call it as a slicer. But why it is called a slicer, we will show you. I'll show you some examples, right? Okay. Okay, so we have one of the query, right? Like what is the value of default measure for this cube across all dimensions, right? So we have a cube called AdventureWorks. Okay. So what is the dimension? As I told you, right? Dimension will have attributes, right? Attributes will have members, right? Attribute will have, this is the hierarchy. Dimension table, example dim product, will have an attribute called product ID, which will be members will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 up to 10. So this is the hierarchy, right? This is the hierarchy of a thing, right? So I have a question like, what is the value of default measure for this cube for across all dimensions? Means just take all the dimensions, okay? In your measure groups, there is a default measure. Example, in our cube, our default measure was sales amount, okay, by default, which is treated by analysis services. So like this, like you will have a default measure for every project. If you don't set it, by default analysis services will set one thing, right? So what is the value of default measure for this cube across all dimensions, right? So what are the different dimensions? It has so many dimensions here, right? But there is a default measure which is a fact. What is the sum of it? So if you want to do this, right, you should not do anything. Just do select from AdventureWorks. So what is it? It is giving the total sales amount from internet sales, right? That is the default measure. If you can check the project, it is like that, right? So this is the total sales amount, which is 80,450,596, right? This is the default measure group, right? But with this, can you do something? Actually, you cannot. There is no meaning in it, right? But just to understand the query, so we are using this, right? Okay. So there is second question like, what is the value of reseller sales amount measure? What is the value of reseller sales amount measure across all dimensions? Okay. So now when they say across all dimensions, it means that you need not give anything because it is already by all dimensions, right? You need not give anything. But they are saying, the question is like, what is the value of reseller sales amount? I want a specific fact, which is a reseller sales amount, which will be my measures, right? If I go to my reseller sales, right, there is a thing called reseller sales amount. This is my reseller sales amount, right? So for this reseller sales amount, what is the value across all dimensions? What does it mean? When you combine it across all dimensions, when you query it, what is the sum of the total value, right? So let us check what is the value. It is again the 80,450,000. It means the default measure for this is the reseller sales amount for this project. It depends on the project, right? So here it means that the number is same, the default measure is reseller sales amount. So here we are doing a concept called where. Okay, here we are doing a concept called where, because we are saying across all dimensions, so we don't give any dimensions, but I want something as reseller sales amount which is sitting in the different axes, sitting somewhere, but I want that sales amount. So what I will do is I will give where measures dot reseller sales amount, means I want that slicer. So this is called a slicer. So I am slicing the data on reseller sales amount. So this is how you should give your slicer, okay? But this is the importance of where condition here. Where condition, the difference between TSQL and here, where condition in TSQL is for filtering the thing. Here it is to slice the things, okay? Okay. So what happens is, sometimes we can, I told you, right, there is a syntax. Select something on columns, something on rows from cube, where slicer. This is the standard syntax, okay? So you can actually do some of the things on columns, right? Defining access 0 on columns. So the same thing, actually you can get the reseller sales amount if I give measures dot reseller sales amount on columns across all dimensions, and again it is the same figure, 80,450,000, right? Okay, so I have one other thing called explicitly defined on axis 1, which is on rows, but there is no axis 0. It means that I don't have any column, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to define it on a row. Okay, what happens is in this kind of scenarios it will give error because there is no axis 0 in your query. You cannot have axis 1, means that without having any columns, don't give any rows. Example, if you execute the previous query, right? If I execute the previous query, I have a column called reseller sales amount. At least you should know what to display on the column. But here we are trying to display on the row. Okay, this is row, but what is the name of the column? So it is in confused mode. So this leads to something an error, right? But what you can do is you can display something on columns and something on rows so that you get more results. Example, there is a query, right? There is a query. What you want to do is for the different product categories, okay? For different product category, just give me the sales amount grouping on that. Okay, give me the sales amount grouping on different product category. It means that I want product category on rows, and I want this one on the columns. From which cube? I want it from a cube called AdventureWorks, which is the cube name, right? So I can set some cell properties like format string value, formatted value, right? What is happening? These are the different product category, right? You can give the different product category, right? And this is the reseller sales amount. So for this different product categories, this is the reseller total reseller sales amount. So these are the this is the first section, okay? This is first section. These are the very basic queries what we have. But in the second section, we will go through a different concept, right? So in the second section, what we'll do is we'll go to a little bit bigger picture, right? So we saw how to query on row columns and rows for the product category, right? So actually how you can write this is actually you can, so if you are confused how to write this, right, you can write something like this. Okay, select, if I'll try to select. So what we'll write the same query, measures dot reseller sales amount, right? So where I can have the measures, so measures is here. Where is reseller sales amount? Reseller sales amount is just go here and drag and drop here. Go here and drag and drop here, and write on columns. Right? What I want the product category from product dimension, right? Where is my product dimension? Go to the product dimension. Okay, and I have what should I should go to the product category, right? So what a product category. So where are my product categories? Product categories is my hierarchy. Okay, just select here, and I have one of the hierarchical members is my category, right? So I can just drag and drop here. So the same thing will appear. Product categories that get category on rows from this cube, right? So you can actually drag and drop the cube name also from cube. So this is how you can write the queries in order to avoid the syntax issues. Okay. So this is how you have to write, right? So you can actually drag and drop from the different things. Okay. So like this you can try it out based on this cube. You can try it out how the cube works, right? Okay. So you can, so this is how to write on columns and rows, right? But sometimes what happens is you want something you want to query this is the same concept, but I want to query on date. Whatever we queried last time is the same, but this time I want to query on date. This is the product categories, but I want to query on different years. Okay, different year, right? But example, if I want to expand this query, right? I want to expand this query to different months. What can I do? I can just go to the date dimension, right? So here what it is showing the calendar year, right? So where is my calendar year? Just go to the calendar year. Here it is displaying according to the calendar year, but I want to display according to the quarter, or I want to display according to the month, right? So where is my month? Example, let us take quarter. I can see the quarter here, right? Again, what I can do is I can just drag and drop like this and remove this. Okay, there is a cache, right? Date dot calendar year, right? So this is taking from hierarchy. There is a hierarchy called calendar, right? So let us also take from hierarchy. So date dot calendar quarter. So I'm dragging and dropping this. So I can go get it on a quarter level. So these are the different quarters. Right? This is how something you can just use the existing hierarchies or different attributes and you can query, right? Okay, so there is some other way of writing it, right? Example, we have taken the year, right? A year to write 2000 up to 2010, right? So what you want to do is, like, if you want everything to be displayed on the same set of data, but if you want to display in a different format on the column level, right? If you want the product category to be on the top, so you can query like this. Everything you can query on the columns, right? Select this one. So within the date, so there will be some section for product categories, right? So there is a, so this is, we are displaying on the columns. Okay, we are displaying here it on the rows, not on the column level. So it is still the same things, but it is writing in a different way, right? It is not something like it is coming down. The coming down we will be seeing in the next queries, right? On the bottom section, if you want to get this, you have to write it as a set. We will see it in the next section. So this is how you can just query the things to get the different things from the query, right? There is some third section. Third section we will use some more other concepts, right? Using some hierarchies or using some sets and cross sums, right? So how this works is, example, I'm querying this. What I'm doing is, I have a dimension called date, right? And I have a hierarchy called calendar, right? I have a dimension called date. I have a hierarchy called calendar, and within the same hierarchy, if I use, okay, if we use this hierarchy information in two different axes, actually this will not work. Okay. Okay. So if you use the same hierarchy in two different axes, example, this is my hierarchy, calendar year, right? Date dot calendar year on columns. Okay. And again I'm using the same hierarchy, which is date dot calendar quarter. This is I'm using on columns, and this one I'm using on rows, right? If you cannot use within the same hierarchy, you cannot use in multiple axes. So this will return an error, right? It means that your hierarchy, within the same hierarchy, you want to display something on rows and you want to display something on columns. So it will go to some confused state. It will not return that. Okay. So in that case, you can query it in a different way. You can if you want to display like that, right? You can do it in a different way. So basically, you should not go to the hierarchy, but you should go to the attribute hierarchy, right? So this is hierarchy, right? I will not go here. What you should go is, you should take year from here, right? Which is attribute hierarchy, and you should take what is the other one? When we want the quarter, right? Where is the calendar quarter? So you have to take something from here. Okay, if you take something from here and if you take something from here, it will work, but it will not work if you take from a hierarchy. That's why date dot calendar year. So date dot calendar year and date dot calendar quarter of year. Date dot calendar quarter of year dot calendar quarter of year. In this way it works. So what it is giving is, for different years, for different quarters, what is the values it is giving in the bottom, in the section. These values are the default measure of your cube. What is your default measure of your cube? My default measure of my cube is reseller sales amount. If I select this, I got 80 million, right? So this is my default measure, which is the reseller sales amount, which I have in measures, reseller sales and reseller sales amount. This is my default measure group which is defined on the cube level when I am developing it, right? So what it is doing, if you are not giving any measures on the columns or rows, it will take the default measure and it will try to give the output. This will fail, right? And this will work. It will try to give the different default measure group, default measure value from your cube, right? So this is how it works. So there is some section called cross join. Okay, there is some section called cross join. Suppose if you want to join, in SQL Server we have the concept of joins, right? We have the concept of inner join, left join, right join, full outer join, right? Yes, so we have the concepts of like this. In the cubes also, if you want to join two things, then you can use a concept called cross join. Okay, in cubes also, if you want to join two things, you can use a concept of cross join. Here what I am trying to do is I want to join two things. Okay, in the calendar year there are 5 years. I want to query the calendar year dot calendar year. So if I go to my date, right, I in the calendar year. So if I go to my date dot calendar year dot calendar year, right? So where is my calendar year? So basically this is folder name. Just ignore the folder name. Date dot. This is my calendar year, right? And this is my calendar year. So how many members I have it here? If I expand this, I have 5. How many members? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 members here. Basically it is 6 members, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? And how many number of? If I go to the calendar quarter, how many quarters I'll have? Usually I'll have the 4 quarters, right? If I go to if I go to calendar quarter, how many members I have? Right, these are the 1, 2, 3, 4 members and 6 years, right? So I can actually join this to make it to 24, right? So this is what is happening. This is done to 24 combinations, right? For the year 2005, first quarter. For year 2005, second quarter. For year 2005, third quarter. For year 2005, fourth quarter. Like this for 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. So it will give the 24 columns as the output, and this is the default measure group. Okay. So this is only the starting of the MDX. Okay. But there are a lot of other things called sets, and there are some things called as how to query your hierarchies in different ways. There are some concepts called children, and there are concepts called members, right? So it can actually show the different things, but I'm just showing you here how to query your MDX and how to use your MDX and how it can be used to solve the different problems. But this is only the starting of it. But a lot of things, if you are eager and if you have a requirement, you can go to the Google, and there are a lot of sections for MDX. And it's not easy to master these things unless you understand the concept of cube and everything, and only with hard practice you can master the MDX, right? So this is something about the MDX I have, right? So any questions I'll be able to take it. Otherwise, like what I'll do is I'll be going to the next step and start the new things. Yeah. So before I go, right, like so I'll take some question here. Like one question from Bhavin is, can we join 2-dimension and facts using MDX query? Yes, you can join, right? So basically, once it comes here, right, it will not be the concept of dimension and facts. Basically, it will become the concept of dimensions and measure groups. So these are your dimensions and these are your measure groups, right? You can join two things using the concept of cross join, right? So here I'll cross join within the same dimension, but you can have a cross join across the dimension also, right? You can cross join across the dimension also. So maybe possibly you can have date somewhere here, and you can take the product in this next section. So what it will do is it will do a cross join something like SQL Server, and it will give the default measure of your project, which is the reseller sales amount. Okay, this is something which answers your query. But as I told you, this is only the starting of it. But there are a lot of online blogs help available for this MDX queries. But try to master the basics first before you go to any of the advanced topics. And usually in real times what happens is, even if you go to the interview, the interviewer who is taking the interview may not be perfect in MDX, because like in my 10 years of real-time experience, I saw very few people who are master in MDX. But the thing is that it is not much used in real times. Only 10% of the times, based on some requirement, it comes up. Okay. So one of the requirements where we used MDX queries is something like this. So when I was working in investment banks, we had some requirement. Like the requirement was something like this. What we have to do is, like, we have developed a cube and we have posted that in a SSRS report, right? SSRS report. So SSRS report is hosted on a SharePoint server. Okay, this is how it works. So based on the login permissions of the user, we have to give the different permissions level from that queue. Okay, based on the login permissions of the user. Example, some of the users who is logging into the SharePoint may be an employee. So just show the stuff what is related to the employee. So some of the persons may be the manager. Just show the stuff what is required for the manager. So this is very dynamic in nature, right? So how it worked is, like, basically we take the authoring permissions from the SharePoint and we know whether it is a manager or something, right? So when you come to the analysis services, we have a section. If you go to the dimension, if I go back here, right? If I go back here, yesterday we were working with Internet Sales Cube, right? So we have a section called roles. Okay. So if you click a new role, okay, either here or if you click in you can have the same kind of new role in the SQL Server data tools when you're developing a project, right? You're developing a project. So here you can actually have your data source, right? And you can have your cell data requirement. Example, if I click the cell data, right? So this cell data, example, some of the sales amount, some of the severe products I should not also show to some of the users, right? So I can select the cube here, right? If I have any cube, I can select the cube, and I can edit the MDX here, right? So you have to write some MDX query to make sure that you get the employee information and display the cell data based on that information. If it is a manager, display it, otherwise display it as not available or 0. So this is very dynamic in nature where we had to use MDX, right? This is one scenario. And the other scenario where we used is, when the users were accessing the Excel sheets, right? So they want some of the named queries, right? In SSIS, they say that, okay, just give me some 5 queries, top 5 selling products, or top 10 losing products, right? Or top 5 sales reps. So this kind of information, they don't want to query every time. They want something as a link in the Excel sheet, which we can perform using the concept of named queries, right? If they click that, there will be MDX running on the back end, and which will give you the result. So that is only the one-time effort, which is in the form of a project. So when you work with the MDX, it is not that they will give you something and just deliver it in 1 or 2 hours. It's not like this. When something comes up in MDX, people will give you ample of time, because people know that it is not easy and it takes some time. And it is not like you do every day. So every day will be in the form of cube. Only during the development time you will use the MDX. Okay. Okay. So if you have any other questions, I'll be happy to take. And if something is not known, I'll try to do a research and I can get back to you. Right. Just try to put as many questions as you have. Right. Okay. So this is something how MDX works. Right. So to start, right, what I suggest you to go to these things and just try to download this, right? So I hope you have noted on how to query this one, right? So it's very easy to get. First of all, you have to get the DataWorks, AdventureWorks 2008 analysis service project, and you should get the source for it, which is in the NDF file, which is a database file. And make sure that it is compiled, built, deployed, processed, and then you come here and you just go here and you can actually query something like this. Yep. Okay, this is something about the different queries in the MDX. So in the slides, right? In the slides, actually we have a different concept. Okay, where we have put some other queries where you can also go through, which are related to So cross joins, functions, and all those things, right? So you can also go through the slides and try to perform some of the actions so that you are at least comfortable what is MDX, right?